Hail to the thief.
Hello there.
Thom, how are you? Good to talk to you again. Tell me about the album, first of all. Did you enjoy making it?
Yes, I did, thank you.
Good, I'm very glad to hear that. Okay, what'll I ask next? Okay, there was talk a lot of the time in the past of other people, not you, saying getting something out of one system with OK Computer and Amnesiac. I know it wasn't necessarily like that, but did it feel like that in some ways, in that you've returned to something with this, or it's just a musical journey, and if it happens to sound a bit like a previous one of those to you, mister, then fine. Is that it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was that, I think we got back, we wanted it to try doing something which was much more about doing performances of things, you know, and it being like people in a room together and making things happen on the spot, sort of thing. As much as we were interested in that, after the previous two, it was sort of, you know, just a little bit too much staring at computer screens and far too much analysis and sort of assembling things from bits and bobs, and kind of wanted to. We deliberately, you know, scheduled 2 weeks in the studio to do the initial sessions and rehearsed for that, just because it sounded like a good idea, really. I guess we missed some of the sort of excitement of the OK Computer thing when we did that. But then, I think that's with rose-tinted glasses, because it was pretty tough. I mean, but I think one of the things that we just wanted to try again was doing things really quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, relatively speaking to us, anyway.
Okay, but like there was talk of like no computers on this album. Did that actually work out that way?
No. Well, I mean, it
did it first, and then you brought them in.
Yeah. The thing is, it was sort of it works, and then there are other things that wouldn't. It was very much. We had a real thing about not being stuck on the computer grid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's just really, it's sort of depressing to listen to. It's hard to listen to, I think, music that's on a grid all the time. I find it difficult. And I sort of, there were computers used on it, yeah, but not. I don't think sort of. It wasn't the reason for the music. You know what I mean? It was just like they were there, and they just were coming up with some wicked sounds. So, or sometimes they were the only way to treat certain sounds or whatever. You know.
So in other words, you were able to stay true to some original idea of let's not do too much. Okay.
Nigel had this thing about, you know, if you're going to use computers, you still got to go in there and turn them on in the same room that you had the guitar and the piano and do it in there.
Like around the time of OK Computer, you were either their biggest or just potentially the biggest sort of rock band in the world or whatever. So it wasn't that you wanted to just be that. You wanted to be a bit more experimental. For the sake of just the idea of following the muse of the music, was it? It wasn't because of, we better react against this now because we've had the bands, which was huge, and now we've had OK Computer, which was huge. Let's be different for the sake of it. It wasn't like that, was it? No. It was just, you wanted to be experimental because you wanted to be experimental, because of what you were listening to.
Well, there was kind of no point in even trying to carry on where the OK Computer thing had ended up.
No.
Because none of us wanted to be there. I mean, me especially, but nobody did. Nobody was... You know, it was just never going to happen like that. I mean, as to why it was like that, I don't really know. It's sort of, I just hated so many things about what we did and had to get away from it.
Assuming you hate some of the things that George Bush has done over the last while, the title of the album...
Good link, yeah. Good link.
You noticed, sorry. No, what I mean is that the title of the album, Hail to the Thief, refers more to the fact that when the elections happen in the States, whatever way they can do elections, he doesn't even have a mandate. Like he shouldn't have won that last Florida count which made him the president, or does it? But the thief of votes, or the thief of the presidency.
Well, yeah.
Is that what it is? Is that what the title can
Well, I mean, it wasn't really, because the weird thing was that I didn't know this at the time. It was based around a story that was on the radio on the PM in Britain, you know, on the current affairs program in the evening, and they ran this story about how some other president brought his son an election, he became president as well, and how he was referred to as the thief.
Oh, right.
And I was listening to that, and they had run it straight after the first allegations of the Florida votes had been rigged. And at that time, people were sort of suspicious, but no one was sort of saying it in the press, and it turns out only the British press, only BBC and tiny bits in Europe were actually saying this vote's rigged. In America, it wasn't actually even being discussed at all. It didn't, you know.
All right.
But anyway, but it was more like, that's where it came from, but it ended up just coming from lots of other places as well. I wouldn't say that is definitely, I mean, I think the others wouldn't have gone for it if they felt that was the whole record, you know, and that summed up the record. I mean, to me, it's sort of, now I look at it like, it's just absurd. It's like theatre of the absurd, you know, this is fucking bonkers, you know, that's it. End of story. And like a fairy tale or something, I don't know.
And would you add that to all the sort of, I don't know, the experiences you might have had a few years back with sort of Jubilee 2000, with the British press taking it in with the Reclaim the Streets thing and making it look like it's all the same thing, with politicians the way they do and stand there and try to get whatever it is they want and say, these two people just should not be in the position that they're in. It's as simple as that. Like as in Blair sold out anything he might have meant in 96, 97, and George Bush is obviously not the full 5p.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just don't think it's just about politics, but I mean, obviously I agree with what you're saying. It's just, I'm in quite a weird position really, because I'm actually terrified of what's going to happen when we get to the States, you know, with this.
Hey, the Dixie Chicks are still alive.
Yeah, no, I know.
What about other stuff, like dadhood, being a dad? Like there's I Will and Wolf at the Door, these two songs of the album, which may not necessarily, you might say, no, that's actually not, that's about a sheep in Yorkshire or something, I have no idea. If it is what I think it's about, do you fear for your kids' future?
Yeah. I mean, that to me is more what the record's about than the absurdity of the moment, you know. It's a general, like, how can we be in a position where we seem to have relinquished all control over our future whatsoever? I mean, the Kyoto thing, all the environmental stuff, the lobby groups that bought Bush the election. I mean, all those oil groups. I mean, that should be really by rights sending people into the streets, but it's not happening because. Like, I guess, like what you were saying is that really people, there's a sort of level of disconnection from the people and government, which is just so pronounced. I mean, in Britain, before the war in Iraq, it was just so obvious that even people who thought that we should, maybe it was a good idea to go into Iraq, and obviously the Saddam guy he's really obviously bad, and if they do have weapons of mass destruction, then we really need to sort this out, or do they don't, and mind. Even those people were saying that they didn't agree with the way the whole thing was being conducted, and yet it was being done in their name, and they couldn't do anything about it. And but when we were making the record, it was the same thing. It was the Afghan war. It was the same scenario, pretty much, in give or take a few facts. And before that was the Kyoto thing, and it's just this constant series of things that will dictate everybody's future, and everybody's got jack shit they can say about it.
The acceptable face, say, of a campaign against the working of the IMF or the World Bank, as you mentioned before, is something like Jubilee 2000, or was at least in the initial stages when you joined it. When you then saw it as possibly a chance for Blair to get a photograph taken and get a nice smile, and Alistair Campbell making sure that it happened that way. Yeah. Did you despair? Did you lose interest? Do you say, Bono, you go ahead, man, I thought I was going to whatever, or do you still try and help out? Is it still part of what you are?
I think the trouble with it is, the Bono was basically trying to get everybody on board all the time, and was quite happy to leave it open to be, you know, for politicians to take what they want from the situation, and then not deliver, you know what I mean? And Jubilee 2000 was very much like keeping a positive attitude, trying to keep everybody on board, because, you know, you have a very genuine and well-meaning and very broad section of the population, generally speaking, who are into this as a thing, you know. And the governments felt that they had to say what they needed to say, and it did work to an extent, and they got a lot done. But the problem, the constant argument that I had, or debate, it wasn't really, you know, it wasn't a shouting match, was that really the IMF and the World Bank as structures had to be dismantled.
Right.
And this was the big debate within Jubilee 2000 as well, as like, you know, we can't say that, because if we say that, then they'll just put the shutters up. But everybody was thinking it, you know, or at least if they weren't thinking of it, thinking we have to restructure it, you know. But basically, I came out of it thinking, okay, there's a reason why they're not going for this, and it's power. They need the power over these countries, you know. And it's still now, it's still like the debt issue is absolutely fundamental to, for example, the war on terrorism. You know, if you have enough countries on their knees in a state of anarchy, and you've got yourself a war on terrorism, full stop. You know, because people are desperate, they ain't got nothing to lose. You know, they're just going to do whatever. You know, I don't know. To me, basically, the bottom line was, you know, the Jubilee 2000 was trying to work within the you know, trying to persuade governments in a constructive manner, which Bono was extremely good at, extremely persuasive man, and able to walk into any room and, you know, get results. Whereas my trouble was, I was a little bit too happy to shout at them, not get anything done, just put, you know, put those people's noses out of joint, because ultimately I felt that really there was a deeper root cause, which was the fact that you know, the structures themselves, like the World Trade Organization, was basically a kangaroo court, full stop, and needed to be dismantled. But, you know, I couldn't say that within Jubilee 2000, although I mean, I'm sure they probably will be saying it now, actually, Jubilee 2000, Jubilee Plus, or whatever it is. I think they're a bit more radical, but to me, I just want to get these things dismantled, you know. Anyway.
Do you feel it's incumbent upon you in your position of fame or power or whatever it is to get involved, at least in a few things, or at least in things that you so believe in? Or, like, I don't know where it seems like you even get the time, to be perfectly honest, because it's...
I don't.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But is it incumbent upon you to do that? Do you think, like, you wouldn't go to bed as easy at night if you didn't, considering the fact that you become so, I don't know, famous, well known, you have a position, people will listen, certain people. You should use it.
I think I don't really see it in terms of, like, I should use my position. I see it in terms of, well, to be perfectly honest, it's my bedtime reading.
So in other words, you have a huge interest in the way global economy works, and you'll read about that.
But not just the global economy, but, you know, I mean, recent history, really, and what's been, you know, things like I've been reading about the way America's undermined the UN since it was started, and blah, 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 and reading something else, which is an interview with Scott Ritter, which is absolutely mind-boggling, you know. And that came out just before the war in Iraq, and, you know, that's what I read. But personally, I'm aware of the fact that it's not very good for you to get stuck into all that stuff all the time, you know. So,
is there anything at all about any kind of
and also I kind of agree that it can be poisonous creatively. So you know.
Creatively as a musician?
Yeah, because it messes with your head so badly, you have to sort of get away from it.
The album then, the Hail to the Thief album, if the sound of the last albums were destructive, as you once said to me, or fragmented, what's the sound of this album? Like, are we back to something more mainstream with some of the... I mean, like, some of the songs the last stuff were mainstream.
Well, I thought so.
Yeah.
Well, what do I know? I think it's sort of a little bit more joyful, generally speaking, as a record. It's joyful in the sense of it has sort of, to to me it's kind of a positive sound, generally speaking, and it's more shiny, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I was enjoying singing again as well, which kind of helped.
Okay, look, I mean, a lot of people don't take themselves seriously. Let's just say for a minute that you, Thom Yorke, take yourself seriously.
No,
Has dadhood lightened you up?
Oh yeah.
Has it?
Oh yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, but it was, yeah, I mean, obviously, all the personal stuff, but in the context of this, I mean, it's interesting how it made me, I just sort of got back into, you know, I understand why I'm doing this now. I'm no longer gonna, you know, all the sort of the guilt and all the sort of analysis bollocks all went out the window, because A, I don't have time, and B, it makes you sort of think, oh yeah, okay, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And you just fucking get on with it.
So just do it, yeah.
Yeah.
By the same token, did the studio thing be the same as it was before? Like you jettisoned an awful lot of stuff, and sometimes 6 months later you might actually go back to it and say, actually, that was really good, let's use that.
Well, no, the interesting thing is we didn't do that at all this time, because we prepared everything for the initial 2 weeks, and everything was based around that idea. So there was very little, virtually none, no sort of trawling through anything to find anything. I mean, really, I mean there were old songs on there that hadn't worked and suddenly had a place, but picking stuff off the shelf and so on, we did virtually none of.
So when you made Kid A and Amnesiac, did you have to almost redo them to do them live on stage because there's so much going on?
Yeah.
And that it'll be different this time around?
Well, I guess it won't be as much this time because we actually prepared them before we went in, you know what I mean? We did the live stuff anyway, so. But it was obviously, it was a bit of a revelation to actually take stuff that you'd written very much in the studio with editing and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, just turn it into, and realise that it was just pretty straightforward, actually, and, you know.
But were there still times in the studio when nothing happened? Because a week or two go by?
Well, was it a whole week? No. I mean, we've got good at sort of like getting to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, nothing's going on, or 7 o'clock, and just like, fuck it. Go home, forget it. Which is, it's another guilt thing, probably.
We've
got to get clock in and clock out thing. We've got to get out of that, you know, like, you know, we're not into it today, so let's not stay here and poison it. Let's just go home and come back with it, something that's not going to poison it.
Like with OK Computer, you might be listening to Ennio Morricone or something like that, right? I mean, that was one of the things mentioned. Like maybe or possibly with Kid A and Amnesiac, was Charlie Mingus, or was Tekra, was Apex Twin or whatever.
Yeah.
Has there been anything in the studios lately? You weren't listening to Lulu or anything like that? Nothing surprising.
You're saying it sounds like Lulu?
No, I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't know what the influence might be, so I have absolutely no idea. But I mean, like, I presume you've had something listened to besides Radio 5, or besides Radio 4 and major news programs.
Well, the really weird one was I didn't really have, we moved the house and we moved away into the countryside for a while, and I had to pick up records really quick, and I picked up all the old Beatles stuff. I thought, oh, that'd be nice, I'll be able to sit down and blah blah blah. And I went through like you know, the last sort of 4 or 5, and I didn't listen to a lot, but I listened to them and was like, shit, these songs are really short, and they're really to the point.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah,
they
really
even
when they were weird.
That's incredible.
They were
That's
really
what I've been listening to most over the last year as well, and they really are short, and they're great. Even when they were weird, like Tomorrow Never Knows and something else, they're really short.
The one that blew my head off was Happiness is a Warm Gun.
That's really short.
Which is like, I think it's 3 minutes.
Yeah. And the one before is quite long, which is While My Guitar Gently Weeps. That's the track before.
Yeah.
That's one of the longest on that side.
Oh yeah, but it does feel it as well, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so and I was like, shit, that's what we should do. We should do short things.
Yeah. There's other things, by the way. One of the last times I spoke to you, you mentioned something about Romeo and Juliet, which was the soundtrack thing. It sold 5 million copies. You had a song or two on that. And when you went to Greece, you couldn't believe if people knew these songs. And it was because of the Baz Luhrmann soundtrack.
Yeah, that was weird.
Now, the thing about that is, so I didn't know at the time that you were actually commissioned to write a song. In fact, when I see it then, an OK Computer.
asked me to do it.
Yeah, it never occurred to me when I see an OK Computer. It's like it actually says soundtrack for a film or whatever the thing is after it. What about that? I mean, like, you said you really liked that idea. In other words, it was almost like a deadline. It was somebody else saying, you have to write this song.
Yeah.
So,
it was, yeah. I mean...
Would you like that? Would you like somebody to say, listen, I want 5 songs by the end of next week for the next Radiohead album, Sonny?
Yeah. That would probably be really good for me.
That's what I mean,
because, it was a combination of sort of basically someone sort of saying, we need this, and it needs to be this sort of thing. So you immediately start thinking, sort of looking out for it. And then talking, you know, because it was very much done with Johnny as well, and Johnny had these bits and bobs, and it all went in together. But the really interesting bit was simply that he sent me like this video clip that was only about 10 minutes of the film, but for some reason it just went ping in my head, and it had a real sort of impact on me. I guess because I was thinking of, I don't know quite why, but it did. And so it was as much watching the film itself, which is weird because I don't normally have that.
And did it actually inspire you to write the track Exit?
Completely, yeah.
Really?
I mean, the musical stuff was sort of there. I mean, that song was a weird thing as well, because that song was like me trying to do a Johnny Cash thing.
Right.
Just imagine that. Because I just got the prison, Johnny Cash prison record.
The Folsom Blues kind of thing,
yeah.
all that, yeah. Okay, there was a thing about overcoming guitar limitations by throwing them out with OK Computer, or by treating them with OK Computer, overcoming guitar limitations by discarding them for, say, Kid A or something.
Well,
is there a problem with... I know, but did that have to be approached this time around? Or did you have to embrace the guitar again, or what? And Johnny didn't seem to mind throwing them out, by the way.
No, and I mean, because he agreed with me that you know, he was horrified about the idea that suddenly, effectively, you're not told exactly, but you feel like, well, I have to carry on using this instrument because this is rock music, and that's what I do, and so he was up for getting away as far as possible as he could, as much as me, but then he's a multi-instrumental person anyway. I mean, he's so...
But had rock music as such, you couldn't listen to that anymore, had it lost its taste, have you got it back a bit? Like, would you listen to the White Stripes or the Strokes?
I like the Strokes, yeah. I mean, I like that record. I mean, I like Chili Peppers. I've become a big Chili Peppers freak. Went to see them with my girlfriend, and it's brilliant. I do. I like, what's that, Black Keys, have you heard that?
Yeah.
I like that, that's funny.
The album after this one, Hail to the Chief, pretty soon. You don't need to go to the Victorian Mansion or something for 6 months and start looking at TV.
Where is it? I really don't know, actually. I think we might end up doing it over the course of touring this.
Yeah.
Sort of what it feels like. But it might not be anything like this at all. That's the only thing. It might be virtually unrecognisable.
Well, I mean, R.E.M. toured Monster in 1995, and then they came out with Automatic for the People. Oh, no, with the New Adventures in Hi-Fi.
Which is their
from the
best record.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's a very strange kind of...
And it was weird because Mike Mills at the time said, we've just done our best record.
Yeah.
And I was like, how? What?
Yeah,
How?
literally on the road.
Yeah.
There was, at least twice in their career, R.E.M. had to sit down and go, what are we doing? What are we going to do? At the end of the 1980s, you two had to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And they had to say, listen, we've got to reinvent, literally. Have you ever felt that? Or were any of the movies that I've seen, any of the albums that I've seen, any of the Yokes, or did you ever feel you had to do that?
What, sit down and say we have to
Or else does one just follow one's muse, or wherever it takes you?
No, I think you always got to kick it. I mean, there's an element of like, can't do that anymore. And even saying, I should imagine that was probably the same for them. It's like, this tends to be the same for anyone really. You go down a certain path and then you just get to the end of it. You go, ain't nothing here now. And there's no point trying because there's just nothing here. So I think you always have to sort of feel like you're treading water really, one way or the other. It doesn't really matter how it is. Otherwise, Otherwise, you can tell it's not, tell it's not real, or tell it's not spontaneous, or whatever, whatever the fuck it is that you need to have.
Okay, well look, as a final question then, looking back at what a long, strange trip it's all been, Thom, a highlight surely, the Smash Hits tour of 1995, when you played with E17 Boyzone.
Yeah, we did Iron Love. Oh, that was just brilliant. That was actually I would say that's one of the highlights. It was brilliant because you freaked the poor woman out, and where's the thing, and you just said, I'm not going to play on this. Yeah. You can't do that to people. On live TV, it's just the best. You've never seen a face like that in your life, man. We're not going on.
But you did go on.
Yeah. Well, we kind of had to. Oh, the poor kids.
You've made it.
Well, we'd have disappointed the kids because they just so wanted to see us. Especially their mothers who were going like this.
Yeah, I'm sure, absolutely. Look. All right, well listen, Thom, onwards and upwards, and thanks a million for talking to us.
Thanks, man.
Always a pleasure.